At a busy airport in South Korea, passengers are moving in an orderly manner. However, a man wearing the vest has very strange actions. He goes to a toilet without a knife, a small incision under the armpit, put a small glass bottle inside, and stitch it up. While adjusting my clothes, he suddenly noticed that there was that AI in the toilet. The back was about to open the inspection door. He heard footsteps outside the toilet door. Jae-hyuk pushed the suitcase in. The person in the toilet is actually Sumin, Jae-hyuk's daughter. The women's toilets are too long. She was forced to go to the bathroom. Jae-hyuk used to be an excellent pilot, but now I'm afraid to fly. I lost this glorious job. The specific cause will be revealed later. His daughter Sumin. To cure my disease. Goats are forced to overcome fear and get on a flight to Hawaii. Man wearing vest, worried that Sumin would reveal his secret, should actively approach the talk. Sumi said something to Jae-hyuk. He immediately became tense and even tried to ask. I noticed that the man in the suit was not normal. Only friend. Quickly pull the daughter out of the test area. Security right now. Man wearing vest, holding a small nebulizer, and lie that it's an asthma device. Airport staff no doubt and show through. The passengers took turns getting on the plane. The flight to Hawaii is about to take off. Meanwhile, the police get news from the people that there's a mysterious man who posted a video thread on the internet. They will blow up the plane today. It didn't say which flight it was. The police said it was just a cruel joke. But Inspector Inho felt something was wrong. Immediately start the investigation. Not long after, some kids ran to the police station and say that this man lives in their neighborhood. Get this clue. Police. The captain immediately led the team to the scene. The man's door opened wide. A stinky smell in the nose. Old man amazing. It turns out that this is a laboratory. Biochemistry. In the corner of a corpse, bloody death wrapped in food wrapper appears. He immediately contacted the coroner. Preliminary examination. It shows that the victim had a ruptured capillary all over her body and coughed up a lot of blood. Sum up all, this is a poison murder case. Then they found a lot of video at the scene. When you open it, he discovered that these are videos. Record the process of the experiment. This is a deadly virus. It's highly infectious. Cannot exist in solution. So it's been frozen into powder. The purpose of the experiments is to shorten the incubation period. Disease of 6 withdrawal. Just spray this powder in an enclosed space. All the creatures inside will be poisoned. Eventually ruptured veins and internal bleeding to death. No matter the goal. What flight was this man's attack on? The consequences will be catastrophic. At the same time on a flight to Hawaii, the goat turned its head and was amazed. Spotted the man in the vest. Also on this flight. Not long after the plane took off, the man in the suit stood up and went to the toilet. He made an incision under his armpit. He took out the small glass bottle he had hidden. It's assembled into a nebulizer. Inside is white powder. It's the deadly virus that the police discovered. He sprayed the powder innocently up the sink hand and ventilation slot in the toilet. After completion, he walked out with a happy face. Sumin wanted to go to the bathroom. The man in the vest smiled politely and gave way. But when Sumin was about to open the door, a fat man can't stand it anymore. Chen and in front. Sumin narrowly escaped a scourge. The man in the vest bent over in a whisper something into Tai Sumin, while the fat man just went to the toilet. Detected there is a layer of fine land dust radiating. He irrigated his hair. I didn't know I was infected. Lan is faster. When I returned to my seat, he's still clapping dust on his clothes. Continue to increase the spread of 6 withdrawals. On the other side, a flight attendant goes to the toilet, touching the dust on the sink hand. They even put it on people. No one knows that the air conditioning system on the plane has land dust. This deadly all over the corners of the plane. Jae-hyuk sits next to a young man watching the video that the man in the vest posted online. They said they would attack a flight. The boy thought this was just a joke. But Jae-hyuk immediately recognized the person in the video. It's the man in the vest. Be aware of the danger. Jae-hyuk hurriedly took the video to the crew. He said that this dangerous man, it's on the plane, and even told Sumin. Everyone on the plane is going to die. The flight attendant promised to follow up. SAO every action of the man in the vest. It's time for lunch. The waiter used to clean the toilet, carrying part of tet for the captain, without knowing that piece of beef. It's got toxic powder. The captain accidentally ate it. The old man here has found the clue. Man wearing vest. He was a senior researcher, high at a multinational pharmaceutical company. He resigned suddenly 4 years ago, and a few months ago, his mother died of illness. He rushed to the airport immediately. Request the arrest of the man wearing the vest. There were no guards on the plane. Now the effects of the poison have begun to appear. Fat man feels very uncomfortable. Should go to the toilet. Then, he was horrified to see that he was starting to bleed his nose. Then the blood vessels in the eye suddenly burst. He panicked and ran out into the passenger compartment. looking for help. But immediately, spitting out a large pool of blood and falling to the floor. Doctors among the passengers immediately proceed to check and found out he was dead. Jae-hyuk realized the death of the fat man definitely related to the man in the vest. I was angry, rushed into a fight with him. In times of chaos, wounds under the armpits of the man wearing vest is exposed. Reveal the real culprit. Passengers on the plane join forces to control this man. But in the meantime, he's still deliberately spraying VIs drawn around. This leaves no AI on board. Get rid of the risk of infection. In the cockpit, the crew received a message from the captain, sent from the airport. The captain immediately left the cockpit to check the situation in the compartment. However, the captain also showed symptoms. Cough, and on the hands grow red blisters. Clearly infected with 6 withdrawal. The captain was infected. The old man almost collapsed. Because your wife is on this flight. Not long after, all the passengers on the plane started coughing violently. For inhaling toxic powder. Time is running out and the task is heavy. The presidential government of Korea set up a crisis management team immediately for emergency response. They're going to start an investigation from the pharmaceutical company. Because the headquarters is in the United States, the company does not cooperate. In addition, the man in the suit resigned a long time ago, so they're even less connected. Obviously, this attack, the slow pace of the presidential administration, he couldn't be more patient. He stressed that type 6 withdrew. It's not just toxic, very strong, but also spread very quickly. Song proposed to negotiate with the man in the vest, in the hope of meeting his demands. We can get the antidote. But this thought is naive. Because the man in the vest, I have no intention of leaving, survive. He was determined. Carry 150 passengers on board. It's worse than the captain. The most seriously infected. He died just before that. The plane lost control. Immediately terminated. Stable flight status. And it starts rolling around continuously at 10,000 meters. Immediately the cabin fell into chaos. The flight attendants could not get back to their seats. And passengers who weren't wearing seat belts had VA banging against the wall. Aircraft cabin. Some people even pass out on the spot. The plane is almost 90 degrees inclined, plunging rapidly into the sea. In 1,000 pounds hanging hair, Deputy Captain Jae-hyuk managed to get into the cockpit and try to steer the plane. Temporarily solve the danger of plane crash. The passengers on the plane breathed softly, but the man in the vest died. That means there's no chance to find a cure. The emergency response team also came to a standstill. Add to that the chaos in the plane. Some of the passengers turned around and posted it online. The incident was quickly reported by the media and become the focus of attention, cause a wave of public opinion. Under public pressure, airlines and the president's office to hold a press conference to give feedback, knowing that the fatal withdrawal 6 is wide land on the machine. The passengers immediately fell into a panic. It's worse. More and more passengers are dying of the virus. The flight attendant used to clean the toilets. Rapid onset of convulsive symptoms, foaming mouth and death. Even the crew members are trained. Professional training. I can't stay calm either. To minimize the damage, we need to quarantine everyone who's infected, who have fever, or appearance of blisters on the skin. Was asked to move towards the tail of the plane. A passenger named Jo Mi-nam, pointing to the eczema on Sumin's hand and insisting, assume it's a blister. And asked them to produce a medical certificate. If not, they'll be forced to move towards the tail of the plane, even though it's unique. I don't want to care about the accusations, but the harsh eyes of those around her made Sumin felt. Mi-nam feels uncomfortable, and he wanted his father to take her to the back of the plane. For the safety of Ji-hyuk's daughter didn't want to do that. However, the strong opposition from Do Mi-nam, the silence of others makes Ji-hyuk desperate. Finally, my father was forced to give in. Tight space in the tail of the plane tight. Nick the infected. After taking simple protective measures, Deputy Captain Goat Filial, with the crew, tried to find a way to help. The passengers are infected. The old man did not want to wait to die. He risked going to the pharmaceutical company, in the hope of getting the cure. However, there is not enough evidence. The police were not issued a search warrant. He was finally stopped at the gate. The two sides did not agree, leading to violent conflict. Plane request emergency landing permission at US airports. But when I found out this was a plane crash, the US immediately refused to let the plane in. Emergency handling team. He has contacted the White House several times. All 7 failed. There's no other way. The captain must obey orders and prepare to return to Korea. The golden sunset illuminated the plane's cabin. But there's no hope. Time goes by every second of every minute. The passengers are completely infected, fall into despair. Before death, all human efforts seem to be in vain. The infected in turn died in agony. As soon as the situation comes to a standstill, old man surprise, I received a hidden call. The name of the company's employees. Topline Pharmacy Kia said. There's an employee named Day in the company. She was working with a man in the suit. Following this clue he sent to the residents of a grate. But he jumped out the window and ran away. They even robbed a deliverman's motorcycle and galloped off. The driver immediately drove in pursuit. However, at a crossroads, because the speed is too fast, his car had VA collide directly with a bus. Caused the car to roll over on the spot. He was injured but tried to get out of the car. This disorder caused I dare not continue to flee anymore. He told the old man that he had no ill will. But only by the man in the vest. A few years ago, pharmaceutical company received a type 6 mutant withdrawal from the Middle East. This virus is not only highly infectious, it also causes the body to bleed. It's extremely dangerous. Man wearing vest. I've led a study group on this withdrawal. But in the course of the study, something went wrong. Exposed them to the virus. In the end, there are only people, men wear vest, and a member of the research team survived the withdrawal 6 infection incident. The man later reported to the police. Because the man in the vest intentionally letting people infected with 6 withdraw. To calm the situation, the pharmaceutical company fired the man in the vest. The allegations and the treatment. This injustice has made him to take revenge on society. He took advantage of his affection to attract a great, lured him to steal Form 6 withdrawn from the company. The situation on the plane is getting worse. Even the deputy captain. There were also blisters on the hands. His time is not much. Through a conversation between the right goat and the chief stewardess, everyone knows that goat was not just a pilot. He's also an excellent captain. In an air crash, air traffic control advised the goat, turn the plane around. But he insisted on an emergency landing, even though the passengers survived. But 2 flight attendants in the back of the plane were killed. To help others get out of the plane. Fire. One of the flight attendants was the captain's wife. This incident left a huge shock to the family. Makes you give up your career. The captain called Jayak into the cockpit. You are ready to fly the plane at any time. Meanwhile, forensics used body samples found at home. Man wearing vest for successful culture 6 withdrawal. Echelon 6 retractable structure image. To the surviving members of the research team. This member, since the 6 infection withdrew, had to be treated in the hospital. Through the terrible pain. Life is not equal to death. He confirmed that this was the company's withdrawal medicine with this evidence. Emergency response teams put pressure on pharmaceutical companies. Claims that if they don't cooperate, the company will face the risk of bankruptcy. The company is forced to comply. Fortunately, they have the anti-6 factor and developed the perfect vaccine. When I heard this news, the people on the plane were excited. However, just when everyone thought victory was near, a new crisis has emerged. The captain, after vomiting blood, notified Jay that the plane is running out of fuel. And whether we can fly back to Korea or not, it's still a big question mark. To ensure safety, the captain made an emergency landing at the airport, Narita, Japan. However, when air traffic controllers in Japan detected change in flight route, they immediately panicked. Just like America, Japan will not allow this plane to land, and asked to leave the airspace immediately to chase the plane away. Japan has even sent fighter jets to. The captain didn't want to give up. But soon after, fighter jets start firing warning shots. The passengers on the plane screamed. When this doesn't work, Japan uses a stronger measure. The fighter tried to crash into the front of the plane. Force them to choose between leaving or destroying together. In a moment of extreme stress, the captain succeeded. Adjust the altitude of the plane. Temporarily ensure safety. However, he was exhausted and passed out soon after. The plane began to lose direction. I see that goat. After many years. Take it once again. Joysticks to stabilize the plane. After the Japanese government made a statement. Explain the refusal to land the plane. They believe this is necessary to protect national security. Even though the Koreans have found a cure. But because 6 withdrew was the man wearing the vest. Studied and may have mutated. The effectiveness of the drug has not yet been determined. This information has sparked hope in my heart. People on the plane quickly disappear again. Meanwhile, the South Korean president also appeared ambivalent. Some people suggest that when the plane lands, isolate all passengers before treatment. But some officials don't want to take that risk. Because if the antidote doesn't work, the return of infected people to Korea will put the whole country into a state of crisis. Ji-hyuk contacted the South Korean airbase to ask if the plane could land, but didn't get a response. Until the South Korean president gave the order, the new airbase agreed to allow and send for fighter escorts the plane. However, this move has met with opposition. Strong words from the Korean people. They toothed banners pulled to the airbase to protest. Even in conflict with the police. Some extremists even post online. Propose to shoot down the plane with missiles. 6 withdrawals have a 40% mortality rate. Do you want to kill us all? The sharp words. It made everyone on the plane go silent. The airport was closed by protesters. The plane had no chance to land. We can just keep flying around. Facing reality. All the passengers on the plane were infected. People start to think. If there's really no cure, should they go back to their families? Sumin asked Jae-hyuk in tears. Maybe they can't land. She doesn't want to hurt her friends. After a complicated psychological struggle, everyone on the plane, I made a painful decision. They won't land. Whether this is the end or not. To save his wife, he left despite all obstacles. Break into the lab. 6 withdrew. To self-test the vaccine. After 6 injection withdrawal. Rapid onset of symptoms and pain. Writhing in bed. The virus and the vaccine are fighting in your body. No one knows who will win. Researchers are constantly increasing the dose of the vaccine. And everyone's praying for a miracle. Happened in the meantime. Jae-hyuk conveyed the decision of everyone on board. Over radio waves to the ground. Eventually the plane gradually left the Korean part. And people start saying goodbye. Finally with my family. When everyone is in endless pain. The surprise lab. It was reported that Song had regained consciousness after his coma. This proves that the vaccine is effective. However, the plane turned off the radio. Emergency deputy group. I can't contact the crew. In an emergency situation, they asked. Relatives of passengers waiting at the airport. Send them a message. As soon as you get the message, people on the plane are reborn. And the right goat immediately turns back on the radio. However, the crisis has not been completely resolved. Because the plane's fuel was running out. You can't fly to an airbase. After considering, Jae-hyuk. Emergency landing at the nearest airport. Blind motorbike taxi airport. Air traffic controllers are concerned that the speed of the plane is too fast. May not be able to slow down and crash off the runway. Jae-hyuk has no other choice. To save fuel and reduce speed. I turned off all the electronics in the cockpit. And the airplane engine. However, the speed did not decrease as expected. So the plane started to slide through the air. Although the speed of flight has decreased. But the landing speed has increased significantly. The plane flew over residential buildings. Almost VA touched fortunately with thick experience. The right goat pulled the joystick at an altitude of just 600 meters. Helped the plane lift up and avoid accidents. After a series of violent tremors. Aircraft. Finally stopped just before plunging off the runway. Finally everyone on the plane was reunited. With their families. However, Old Song. For injecting a large amount of 6 withdrawal for testing. To suffer the consequences. It is serious and takes a long time to recover. But if it's done again. Maybe you'll make the same choice. The film continues the distinctive style of the film series. The Korean disaster. Full of emotion and humanity. It is considered a combination of the above to Busan. The Flu and the Captain of China. Special segment of the Japanese Air Guard. Has created a sense of extreme choking and stress. The movie ends here. Brainstorm review. Hello. See you in the following videos.